Hey folks, my name is Jake, and what you're about to watch comes from GameSpot After Dark, GameSpot's official video game podcast. We were lucky enough this week to have the incredibly talented Shannon Woodward join us. You may know her as Dina from The Last of Us or Elsie from Westworld. If you enjoyed this little chat, be sure to check out the full interview by searching for GameSpot After Dark on your podcast service of choice. Anyway, let's roll the clip. Because you said you've been acting for about 10 years. Was there a point when it kind of occurred to you that you could also take that talent into video games? Or did you just hear about Last of Us Part 2 being a thing and you really wanted to be a part of that?
Well, I mean, I've actually been acting my whole life. Like, I started working on Nickelodeon when I was 6, but I just have been like a lead of a TV show for 10 years. Like, that's when I've been like, you know, fully working. But, you know, I always loved games, and I certainly liked to opine about what I didn't like about game performances. You know, and that was just like my general, like, the things that would take me out of it, where I'd be like, oh God, why are they doing it? Like, who is this person? And I think, like, for The Last of Us, the difference is that like Ashley Johnson's performance was the first time I was like, whoa, who is this? Like, there was a naturalism that, like, not only really worked for this, it worked, it served the story. I found it really moving, and I didn't find it performative. And like, that's something that, like, I just have, it's my personal taste, you know, like, that's because I come from a different world. And like, so I really wanted to, you know, be a part of that. And I was like, oh, let me try it. I want to try it. I wonder if I can do it. And by the way, there's plenty of times I've thought, oh, I could do that. And then I try to do it, and I'm not good at that at all. But yeah, I did, you know, and when they hired me, Neil and Hallie were really receptive to me being like, I want to be like funny, like not disturbingly funny. I don't want to take things, but I really wanted that. And they let me do that. And I, you know, I think I've been trying to tax deduct my gaming stuff for a long time before that. And my dad was like, you're going to get in trouble for this. And I'm like, no, I'm not, because I'm going to work on a game at one point. And then when I called and told him, I was like, oh, I got this job in this game. He was like, I mean, I'm happy for you, but I'm mostly just like shocked that you've justified the deductions. And I was like, made it whole.
You'd mentioned you were a big fan of the original Last of Us. What was it like when you first walked onto the set of Last of Us Part 2, or the virtual, not virtual set?
The medium?
Yes.
Well, I mean, I think like maybe the better way to answer your question was, you know, first of all, like, I knew the world so well. Like, it's really fun to go read for something that it has a world that's already established, because like, especially if you love it, like, you know exactly what you're walking into. Like, you know how to speak, you know, like what and I knew the game so well, and I knew Ellie so well that like, it was just very easy to go in and be like, oh, I love her. Of course I do. Everyone loves Ellie, you know? So if anything, like, that was really fun. That was my second audition I read with Ashley. The first one I actually read with Laura Bailey, because Ashley was out of town shooting on Blind Spot. So Laura played Ellie for my audition, my first audition. And but when I read with Ashley, then I was just like messing with her. I was just like, it to the extent where, like, she talks about this all the time, like, Neil was like going and like talking to her, like, to try to get her to mess with me then, because I'd be like, all right, this time I'm gonna go like this, and she was like, whoa, what? So it was fun because I knew the world. And I was just like, I mean, if this is the only time I get to do this, like, I want to try to like push it around and see what happens. And I don't plan anything I do. You just kind of learn your lines and know what the general arcs of things are supposed to be. And then I just kind of start, and then and it surprises me. It's kind of like Jesus take the wheel, even I'm not religious. It's just the only saying that came to mind. So it's fun. Yeah.
Next question is from NBZ. Lucy, do you want to read this one?
Sure. Question for Shannon. Having worked mainly as an on-screen actor for TV/movies, what are the differences when acting in a game like The Last of Us Part 2, aside from the hundreds of ping pong balls? And would you like to take on more video game roles in the future?
I mean, the biggest difference really, there are things I like better in certain ways. Like, I don't have to go through hair and makeup. It's not about what I look like, you know, they're going to take my performance and turn it into data, and like, these other artists are going to make it their own. And I, you know, again, like I talked about, like, what I really like about filmmaking and all this stuff is how collaborative it is. So like, I find that to be really exciting and interesting. And And also there's not a crew of 250 people like up in my grill. Like they're like 40 feet from me. They're far away from us, which is great. So, you know, when Ashley and I are doing all those scenes, like it really felt like we were alone. Like I could see people kind of in my peripheral vision and we'd just be like, "We guys scoot." But it's such a big stage that it kind of just made it easier, because usually, you know, I've got somebody like right here, like right up in my face, and they're like, "Okay, will you just look at this tape instead of looking at the actor?" Like there's a lot of tricks that you have to do in order to like make those things work. And then also you got like a focus puller right next to the camera, and then you got a dolly, and there's a dolly pusher, and they're like scratching their butts and stuff and doing all kinds of man stuff, you know, and you're like crying because you know you miss someone and you're just like, the guy is scratching his butt crack right now, but don't pay attention to it. So there's a lot of cognitive dissonance that comes with, you know, performing that way, but I didn't have to really do as much when we were doing that. And I really enjoyed it. And also, I mean, Neil and Hallie are just such incredible writers, and like the storytelling and the nuance of it. Also, it took 5 years. So like things really grew, and sometimes like things became more nuanced, and there was a lot of time to like kind of sink into it, and to where it was just like really second nature. But I would like to do other games. I mean, I'm spoiled, so I like this narrative kind of stuff a lot. So, you know, I would love to do it, but I think like it would have to be something that I felt really inspired by, but there's no lack of those things happening in games right now. So that's cool.
How often are you going in across that 5 years to film stuff?
Well, it kind of depends, you know, because, you know, there's 2 sections of the game, first of all. So I'm only really in half of it. And also Ashley Johnson was on a television show that's shooting in New York. So we would shoot when she was in town, which was like, would be through the summer. And then also on usually like holidays and stuff, when she would come home to see her family. So like sometimes I would shoot on Westworld and then go on the weekends to shoot The Last of Us, because Ashley was in town when it was over the holidays or something. But so usually when she was in town, it was like a week a month, you know? And that's about it, because, you know, they would take that stuff and then, you know, they start working on those cut scenes and they start building that stuff. And but usually I think, you know, when Ashley was in town, they would shoot a lot of the stuff with us. And then when she was out of town, they'd shoot a lot of the stuff with Laura and all that. So, and then after that, it's VO for like a year, like in the booth.
Did you have a pretty good idea of what the story was early on, or did you figure that out later? Because I know we were talking to some of the Red Dead Redemption 2 directors, and they were like, yeah, we had no idea what the context is for a lot of these scenes, because we were just given pages.
Yeah, no, I did. Yeah, as soon as they hired me, Neil brought me into Naughty Dog and sat me down in a conference room and did a whole PowerPoint presentation for like 3 hours and walked me through the entire game, frame by frame, reference the whole game, not just my stuff, but everything. But, you know, I'd already signed an NDA by the time we started, but also like that's Neil, like the game, it was already, and things got deep into, there were a few things that changed, but not with my story. Like, and some of that stuff that changed, you know, was really stuff that was, as they started shooting, they're like, I think this is wrong. I think this needs to swap or something, you know, like, but I think that only happened a couple times. Otherwise I mean, Neil's a pretty extraordinary storyteller.
That's like the opposite of what you hear about people in Marvel movies who get like weird redacted
same with Westworld.
Scripts.
I'm like, I'm waiting for pages, for pages. Like, you know, it doesn't mean that the pages were done. You know, the dialogue, the scenes themselves, like they still had to, you know, write the dialogue and do those things. But like the arcs of like how those stories intertwined and like what it really was, like they'd been sitting in his head for a long time in certain ways, you know. And then, I mean, Hallie was a big part of that. I think that's what she really went to Naughty Dog to start doing when we were on the hiatus, was to help Neil go through all this stuff, like because he had a partner before on the first game and he wanted somebody to bounce stuff off of and stuff, and then they became an inseparable pair.
Were Neil and Hallie the kind of directors that would give you lines and be like, this is what I want you to say? Or were you able to maybe not improv, but kind of change things around or like suggest ideas if you thought
we're
maybe
very
something didn't fit?
collaborative, and we're still very close. I talk to them all the time. I think we all just kind of work the same way, which is, you know, like there weren't really things that like didn't work. I would just be like, I kind of want to, like, I have this instinct to say, like, you know, I want to stop her from doing that. And he'd be like, that's good, try that. Okay, yeah, you say that, and then try. So sometimes like then he'll watch and be like, okay, try saying this instead. Like, and that is all collaborative, right? That's like, I have an instinct and he's like, oh, that's an interesting instinct. Why don't you say that here? And then Ashley, why don't you do this? And then in fact, like when we were doing interviews, like people be like, you know, what lines did you write? And I'm like, I can't remember. Like, I know that I did it, but it all becomes so symbiotic because we're also like, and also like, I'm not the kind of actor who ever gets like, I don't get like worked up if I'm like, my character wouldn't do, I'll be like, this isn't finished. Like I might not be seeing something, but like but we never had that. I never really felt that. I think the only time I ever did, there's like one tiny moment after the grow house scene where Jesse comes in and we're like putting on our clothes. And I was like, I need him to turn around. He cannot do that. I have to protect her. And he's like, you love him. He's like your boyfriend. I'm like, it doesn't matter. My loyalty is to this other person that I just got nude. Like he needs to turn around. And he was like, I don't understand that. And we had to like argue back and forth about it for like 20 minutes until I was like, Neil, I'm right. I'm telling you, I'm angry about it because that's the instinct. And he was like, and then once he understood it and we did it, he was like, no, that was a good note. It makes sense. And now watching it, it's like, it would be so weird. And I'm like, I was right about that. But it was like, it was just like a male female thing of like, about being like, no, you don't understand what it would be like to have a boyfriend walk in on, or ex-boyfriend walk in on your girlfriend. Like, you're still like, there's a boundary here, man. I love you and stuff, but back up.
It's funny because I played that scene a couple times, so like I know I can see him like spinning
and
around.
He's so sweet about
like,
it. Stephen Chang is such a sweet actor, and he was just like, oh yeah, okay. Like he didn't like. He was like, I just like turn around. He's like, oh yeah, sorry. There's something wrong, you know. And it's just so sweet that you're like, that's it. That's perfect.